have all been there. We have read every leadership book. You have optimized your calendar and you are doing the mindset work, but you still feel a ceiling on your clarity and confidence. What if the block isn't your strategy, but in your energy? My guest today here is Tracy Poizner, a botanical alchemist and the CEO of the tech startup Space Time Alchemy. Tracy is doing something truly revolutionary. She is blending spirituality with high performance medicine to help you bypass mind's resistance and recalibrate your identity at an energetic level. Let's begin. Tracy, you started in homeopathy medicine. What made you feel that the traditional medicine wasn't enough to help high performing women reach their true potential?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, I've been a homeopath for almost 30 years and I love homeopathic medicine, but somehow the precision of it, and I mean it has a capacity to do fantastic healing, but there were two things. One is that it is extraordinarily complex, and even after 30 years, it's still not absolutely clear how to work at this level of really helping someone to change their identity in the sense of letting go of a false identity that is clinging very hard to you. And the other thing was that I felt at this point in my working life, so many decades into what I'm doing, that for me, I really wanted to make a shift away from healing and towards, um, expanding actually the frontiers of our
Mhm.
potential. And I just felt very strongly that energy medicine is the right way to go. It was a process of moving a little bit away from homeopathy and towards a different kind of a niche, I'll say, in energy medicine.
Awesome. So it looks like the energy medicine found you, and you were not specifically looking for energy medicine,
Well,
right?
I can tell you that my early days in homeopathy, I was very much a materialist, which is because homeopathy by itself is already energy medicine. And it was only, you know, maybe 15 or 20 years into my career that my clients started asking for things like computer-based body scan or things that exist, electrodynamics screening, that kind of thing, which I had never used, and for muscle testing, which I had never used. I'd been exposed to it because I loved it when my practitioners did those things with me. So I started using those things, and I started using what we call, it's applied kinesiology, but the
Mhm.
more common word is muscle testing. I started using EFT, the tapping technique,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
phenomenally effective. I mean, it just
Wow.
works so, so well. And as I got more interested in those things, I guess my interests were drawn really more into the spiritual side of things.
Absolutely. And it is quite interesting. And you talked about various things which I want to deep dive into. I can probably have a 1 hour podcast on just this, but let's look at the materialistic approach that you said and moving away from that strictly materialistic approach, right? So for a tech leader who was very used to data, KPIs, and the idea of energetic recalibration might sound like a different language, if I may say. And how do you bridge that gap, right? So we talked about tapping techniques, muscle, and a lot of which makes sense. But how do you relate it to performance?
Yeah. Um, so first of all, I think the people who are going to want to work with me or follow what I'm doing are already exploring spirituality in some part of their life. There are people who go to, you know, Joe Dispenza seminars on the weekend and then they come back to their work and they have just separated these two parts of their lives and they don't know how to put them together. So that is certainly part of my work of just bringing something that they're already experiencing, showing them a pathway for how to integrate that into their lives. But I think the point that will maybe make sense to people is that from an energetic point of view, your personal and professional being is not separated so that if you have difficulty with clarity or confidence or decision making, with having difficult conversations, with being afraid of being, if that's alive in your on the weekend, it is showing up in your professional life. It just is. You can't imagine that this 95% of unconscious thought processes and belief systems really are
Mhm.
not affecting you in the exercise of all of the strategies that you put in place to get better results. So the other thing that's important in terms of, how do we bring these two worlds together is that, you know, two worlds are maybe not for everybody. Some people are quite satisfied to go one step at a time and get a little bit more progress or a little bit of elevation in their career or see a little bit more of change happening. And many people are
Absolutely.
aware that, your most impactful ideas and innovations and instincts don't come to you by sitting longer at your desk and working out more equations or filling out more spreadsheets. You get an inspiration when you are riding your bike, when you're in the shower, when you're at a yoga class. You know, it's connecting with that thing, which is so much more impactful than the extra hours of spreadsheet work, right?
Absolutely.
So for people who say, how do I get more of that? How do I bring
Mhm.
that sort of Einstein factor? That's really where I'm trying to play here.
Yeah, and that's such an important thing that you said, right? Like it's not essentially the extra number of hours you spend, but the inspiration you get. Like I can totally relate to it because creating this podcast was one such inspiration. And I think that's a very good way into understanding. Like you said, the fear of the mind. We call them shadow archetypes, right? So that is one of the most powerful part, like where you study about archetypes and tap into that unconsciousness which drives you and often tells you that no matter how much hard work you do and no matter how much effort you put into something, you have a do you believe that you will get there or not?
Essentially, the idea is that, shadow is the voice of your unconscious. It shows up in several different archetypal ways, and archetypes have been with us since, certainly Carl Jung was maybe brought them into the modern era,
Mm.
but archetypes are
Yeah.
in the Bible, they're in the Hindu scriptures, they're in all the, Greek and Roman mythology and the Egyptians. We've had archetypes since forever. They're, descriptions of certain patterns of thoughts and emotions and behaviors that get turned into a kind of a personality that we can recognize, and we see it coming up again and again. So what I loved about this system of shadow alchemy is that there are only 4 shadow archetypes that they talk about. And these 4 shadow archetypes correspond to 4 channels of consciousness. So each of these channels of consciousness correspond to the content that is streaming there. And then there
Mhm.
are levels of consciousness. So we have the unconscious, which we said before is like the shadow in the background running the picture.
Mhm.
And then we have conscious awareness,
Mhm.
which is, what we're aiming for, to be aware of the present moment, to be present and not ruminating about the past or projecting into the future or thinking about someone else, to be present and aware of what's true, to not
Yeah.
be in the grip of our fears. And then there's a further level, which is where our ideas and inspiration and
Mhm.
creativity come from. And in fact, there's another level. It would refer to the sort of creator level consciousness where you understand that you are projecting the whole show onto a screen,
Mhm.
that it's all coming from you and you make all the rules and you can
Mhm.
decide how the story is going to go, right? So that all made a lot of sense to me. And I loved learning about these archetypes. So that, as I said, there are only 4 shadow archetypes. There is one that's about self-worth and belonging. We call that the prostitute, nothing to do with
Mhm.
sex, but it's about exchanging your value or your self-worth for
Mhm.
something like
Mhm.
belongingness and validation. There's one that's about authority and responsibility. That's called the child. There's an archetype called the victim, which is about resourcefulness and willpower, and one called the saboteur, which is
Mhm.
attachment to facts and data and proof and
Mhm.
evidence, attachment to reward in terms of credibility and maybe reputation. And it's also about faith. You know, taking a leap of faith means moving on something before you can see the outcome, right? So each of these shadows has a corresponding archetype in the world of awareness of reality, you know, clear consciousness, and as we go up and up. And we all have them all the time. Everyone has shadow all the time. The trick is to come to a place where you understand that your shadow voices are lying to you.
Yeah.
And that's your inner critic, it's your inner narrative. It is only lying to you because its
Mhm.
job is survival,
Fair enough. Yeah.
right?
So, yeah, yeah. 100. Would you say it's something like, let's say, I am saying that I can't do this, or let's say I say, I build a narrative around I can't do it. Like that would be more of a saboteur example.
Exactly. I can't do it. I'm not good
Mhm.
enough. But what if nobody comes? What if nobody
Mhm.
buys it? What if people are laughing at me? And the interesting thing is that we're all tied, you know, the saboteur part of us is tied into a stepwise vision of progress.
Mhm.
And the truth is that the most amazing things happen through synchronicity.
Mhm.
We get stuck in thinking that every kind of progress is
Mhm.
connected to an obvious pathway in front of us. And the truth is, I often use a piece of paper to describe what I'm
Mhm.
talking about. But, you know, if we have A and B
Mhm.
at opposite sides here,
Mhm.
we can think that the shortest distance from A to B is a straight line, which we know.
Right.
But the shortest distance is this,
Fair enough.
right? And it's, you know, people often laugh when well, okay, I just folded the paper for those of you who are just listening. Folded the paper so that A and B are touching each other. And this is where you meet someone in the lineup at Starbucks
Mhm.
who knows somebody that you need to connect with, and a new relationship happens, a new job opportunity comes, whatever.
Yeah.
And we don't give credit to that level of reality for being able to move in our lives. But I can tell you that it is just so much more fun. For me, it's more fun to
Mhm.
live being open to that kind of thing. That's really the foundation of this
Absolutely.
philosophy.
That's amazing. And that's so relatable as well, right? Especially we try to think of, oh, I will only go a certain path. And let's say for dating, I'll say, oh, I'll only go on dating apps. And only then I have to go on as many dates as possible. I have to. But then you see people who never went on dating apps were just living their lives and they found a partner because they were actually in that their right energy element and were more synchronized. That
Totally.
so now I want to really understand, Tracy, how do these flowers, like the Bach flowers that you work with, help you to achieve that now that we understand how to connect, like what connecting our spiritual and from practical side is?
Well, this is this is a technology, you know, which it's not made of wires and silicon, but I won't go into it, but I can explain the technology from scientific perspective, how water is able to store and
Mhm.
transmit information because we know this very clearly now.
Mhm.
But it's a technology which is natural to the natural world. It happens automatically when air is condensed and produces drops of water on flower parts that we call that dew. It happens
Mhm.
naturally. And the way that I'm going to scale this in order to be able to, make enough to provide medicine for all the world. It's a very easy process of putting flowers into water and putting them in the sunlight, and the ultraviolet energy from the sun supports the system in the water that separates the electromagnetic charge and creates a gel-like substance in the water where, this a crystal lattice structure forms, which is very similar to the one in silica that is running both of our computers right now.
Mhm.
And in that way, water becomes this kind of messenger.
Mhm.
But, they're kind of like a liquid thumb drive. They
Mhm.
they have information from the plant
Mhm.
that is healing in nature, I'm going to say, because the thing that needs to be healed is some trace of a belief pattern. And that is an archetypal structural thing. All of our beliefs can be categorized into these archetypes, and the information can just find that energy running in your system. And, it can find a distorted code and repair it because it's a lie. It's not true that you're not good enough. It's just a fear that stops us from moving forward, and that's just a distortion of your natural frequency of confidence that everything that I do works out somehow for the best because here I am alive. Despite all the choices that I've made, all of my choices led me here, even ones that seemed in the moment to be what we would call a mistake. It opened a door for something else to come forward, or it allowed me to learn some piece of knowledge that I was missing and couldn't move forward without it. And so it feels like a mistake, but everything happened in the right way because here I am. So the Bach flowers, the way that I use them is to match their wisdom. I don't know if that's the right word, the codes that each of these flowers has. I apply them with an archetypal filter. I'm able to get to a more foundational level than the typical Bach flower work that is out in the world. That's mostly just about emotional and psychological healing. I'm really looking for very subtle remnants of these distorted codes that are holding back people who are in, leadership positions. They've gone quite far already with what they have. They're not feeling restrained necessarily, but they want life to be more interesting or playful or enjoyable. So the flower essences get blended together generally by me in a one-to-one setting, and together in conversation, we help to uncover the inner narrative is a lie. And then bit by bit, we dismantle those lies. And the part that the flowers help is to really bring the body along so that the belief is really installed in the level of your nervous system where it counts. Your body needs to be involved in the process, and that's something really critical that the flower essences are able to do.
And that's so interesting, and so to what I want to understand, like you said, you talked about mindset and narratives, and that's so important that I truly agree that it's very, very difficult because it's like, oh, my last two relationships didn't work, the next one won't work either. It's so easy to believe that. And as soon as somebody makes a small mistake, you're like, I knew this would happen. You try to validate yourself, and it's super, like, in the moment you're like, I knew this would, and you feel, oh, your intuition is so good, and then you realize maybe it's your past experience driving your whole life, which shouldn't be the case. So I would like your advice to our listeners on how does one take, like, a woman who feels stuck in that current mindset. And I come across a lot of women who have built that narrative, right? So what's the first step or a little small step that takeaway that they can take from this podcast today?
I think knowing what you actually want and
Mhm.
allowing that to be okay is a really important step. I think we get easily drawn into a kind of trajectory where you're supposed to want the next thing that comes in a linear way.
Mhm.
The end game is happiness. The end game of
Yeah.
life is joy. Nobody from outside can make you feel happy or satisfied or fulfilled. And we all think that it comes from reflection from
Mhm.
outside, but those reflections are very transitory.
Mhm.
So the beginning is to say, I get to want this lifestyle or this experience, this happiness, and I don't need anyone else to justify wanting that. That's really the first step. Um,
Yeah.
and so we have to get to that place where you can identify and say, okay, on this level, I'm lying to myself. It's another thing that anyone can do is to go out and get a bottle of rescue remedy. Bach rescue remedy is in every drugstore. It's in a lot of, certainly in every health food store. It's in a lot of grocery stores here in Canada where we live. Rescue remedy is 5 of the Bach flowers mixed
Mhm.
together into one blend. And you can have it in drops or in spray. They make a spray that you can spray into your
Mhm.
mouth. And you can put it in water, wash your hands with it, wash your face
Mhm.
with it if you like, or,
Mhm.
take it internally.
Mhm.
But start trying this when you have a moment, when you have to
Mhm.
make a presentation, when you have to have an important meeting, when you're asking for a raise, before you're having a difficult conversation with your partner or a colleague or a team member, when you feel rushed, when you feel
Mhm.
pressured, when you can't focus or you're distracted. Just start proving to yourself that this makes a difference in how
Mhm.
you feel by trial and error. Just see it for yourself and try it in lots of different
Mhm.
situations.
Mhm.
And that will start to open you up to say, okay, I see it doing this for me. Maybe it can do something else.
Yes, absolutely. And that's an excellent way to, get started on the Bach flowers. Thank you so much, Tracy, for being here. It was a really valuable advice that you provided us, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
No, thank you so much. You asked great questions. It was a pleasure.
So, thank you for showing us that leadership isn't just about what we do, but the frequency we do it from. You can find Tracy at Spacetime Alchemy to explore the intersection of spirituality and tech. Listeners, so if logic isn't working, maybe it's time to trust your intuition. We'll see you in the next episode of SHEO Diaries.